I'm Janice Edwards. Coming up on Bay Area Vista, remembering C.A.R.L. Ray. He was a comedian, an activist, an educator. He was our friend. We remember him in this show coming up. Please join us.
This Bay Area Vista special presentation is brought to you by the Santa Clara County Alliance of Black Educators and the 100 Black Men of Silicon Valley.
Bay Area Vista, Vista. Bay Area, Bay Area Vista, Vista. Bay Area Vista.
Welcome to Bay Area Vista. I'm Janice Edwards, and thank you so much for joining us. Today we are remembering someone who has an incredible legacy, and it's hard to believe he's no longer with us. C.A.R.L. Ray was an author, activist, educator, comedian, and as I said in the tease, he was also our friend. For those who never had a chance to meet C.A.R.L. Ray or know about his incredible story, here's a little bit about him.
From a place of hate.
And I'll say this to the stooges that want to take this back to the enemy's camp, to the niggers and all their cohorts, that we white people are going to rise up 140 million strong.
The thing that I always wondered, why do white people hate us?
C.A.R.L. Ray escaped.
My daddy was prepared to die. He knew that day was coming.
This guy was supposed to get rid of all the black people.
And sure enough, we hear a truck coming up the road, and he just walk over to where my father and I was sitting on the porch, and he just tell my father, boy, got to leave, you don't know how to talk to white folks. He shot 8 times, and all 8 bullets hit Daddy in the chest.
The defense attorney tried to intimidate C.A.R.L.
Your daddy's dead because you don't know how to talk to white people, and you know that.
I was ran out of town, suggested to not come back until I learned how to talk to white people.
You don't talk to white folks like that here. I think you're getting a little uppity. Now you tell me where you learned to talk to white people like that.
A descendant of the segregated South.
White males dominated Southern society.
I had been terrorized and lived under a terrorist system for so long until I was just used to it.
Who learned how to turn the other cheek.
Forgiveness is not about those who wrong you. Forgiveness is really about your freedom. I don't have the anger that I had. All of that's gone.
Give it up for C.A.R.L. Ray, let him in.
When I was coming up, my mama be beating me in public. 4 or 5 other mamas are gonna help me out.
After forgiveness, it's just like nothing happened. I'm home again.
Cured the power of forgiveness.
And joining us today, we have Leon Beauchman, who is the president of the Santa Clara Alliance of Black Educators, Rufus White, who is the program director for the Oriki Theater, Rites of Passage, and Chike Nwoffiah, who is executive director of the Rites of Passage, as well as a friend who created the first documentary, A Killing in Choctaw, with C.A.R.L. Ray. So gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
As I said, we remember him, and of course, he would have a joke right now. I mean, I'd have a joke, but he certainly was someone who brought so much life and laughter to many situations. Leon, I'll start with you. How did you first come to know C.A.R.L. Ray?
Well, to tell you the truth, Jen, I'm not sure where I met. He was always there.
I was thinking the same thing.
It seemed like he was always around, and I've been in San Jose for a few decades now. And C.A.R.L. was just part of the landscape. Everybody knew him. As far as his activities are concerned, his involvement with various associations. So he was just sort of omnipresent as far as his personality.
Yes, very true. Rufus, how about you? How did you meet C.A.R.L.?
Well, actually, I met him through friends. He would always be at the places where they would have events, and I would see him on barbecues and when we would go out, things like that. But I also remember almost always seeing him on places where there was an event that was in support of our students and our children.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was always there. And Chike, how did you meet C.A.R.L.?
Well, I think the same thing, which is the amazing thing about Brother C.A.R.L. I knew of him before I met him face to face, and I think the formal meeting with him was after Ann Johnson, who is a very talented playwright and theater director.
Yes, I know Ann.
Had translated his his life story to a stage production, and he was looking to also move that further from stage to screen, and so he sought me out, and when I got that call, it was really interesting. I couldn't believe that was C.A.R.L. on the phone, and then but immediately, like you said, I can't even remember what joke he just cracked on the phone.
Right.
I just like cracking up, and then from there, our conversations and our journey began.
Yes, and that's part of his incredible story because he had engineering in his background as well, but the seminal event that was seen in the C.A.R.L. trailer that we showed just a moment ago had to do with as he was beginning college, his father was shot 8 times in front of him, and that changed his life, obviously. And then in his journey, he talked very candidly a couple of times on different shows about depression, about how one day he just found himself on the floor and he could not get up, and he recognized that it was because of the burden that he carried for so many years, the guilt about his father's death, and also the fact that he had not forgiven the man that killed his father. And so what I loved about him was his transparency in a way in talking about things that a lot of times he said that it's hard for men to talk about. So when you men got together, what did you and C.A.R.L. talk about, Leon? I mean, you said you saw him at events, but what do you remember in terms of conversations and nuggets that he dropped that stay with you?
Well, he was always about the business of helping people. And the conversations I remember with him, he was always wanting to bring people together, to do something for kids, whether it was the tour or other things in the community. And so if that was one consistency in my experience with C.A.R.L. was that he was always about doing something, particularly for the kids. And I think the other part is, and being from the South myself, he wanted kids to not get disconnected from that experience, particularly living here in California, in San Jose, because it made him, and he, I think, believed it really is something that we should not forget as a people as far as where we came from.
Yes, very true. Rufus, how about you? What do you?
Well, very similar to Leon, except that I had a very good experience one time. We were talking, I had known him for a little while, but not very well. Then all of a sudden it came up that, we were in California, but where are you from? And sure enough, I found out he's my homeboy. We were both born in Alabama,
Wow.
the same year, and had such similar experiences. Although I didn't live there the entire time I visited, but I understood. I understood what was going on in Alabama during those times. And it brought us together in a real tight kindred. And from that point on, it was more like we were closer brothers. That because I knew, how his upbringing in the church, the family was primary, education was high on the priority list, that kind of thing. And, so it was almost like I had known him forever.
Yes.
It's just one of those, here's my brother.
Exactly.
Yeah.
His spirit was always so warm and inviting.
Absolutely.
And Chike, not being from here and then learning about his incredible story, how did that impact you once you understood what a killing in Choctaw was all about?
Gosh, I don't even know where to start because Brother C.A.R.L. became a mentor to me, really. We spent 2 years filming that project, and we went back to Alabama. We went back to reconstruct as much as we could some of those particular events. We went to the actual courtroom, this particular courtroom where the man that killed his father was tried, and where Brother C.A.R.L. was put on the stand, and the rest of his life changed, because it was when he left that courtroom that he carried, they forced the guilt on him. in the name of defense, and made an 18-year-old boy feel that he was to blame for killing his own father because he didn't say yes, sir, or no, sir, to a white man. And when we went to Alabama and got to that courtroom, and Brother C.A.R.L. I told him to get on that same stand and talk to us. I can't even describe it in words, because he went right back to that same day, and the demons began to come out. But anyway, in the 2 years of filming that, I was in the car, we were in the hotels, we were doing a whole bunch of things, and every single time he took time to explain things to me and share a little bit more about his life and his journey. But he was always careful to make sure that I was learning, not getting hurt. And so he was using his hurt, he was using his pain to hopefully guide me. And I felt it, and it was just, his generosity of heart is just indescribable. And I've never seen such a thing. And up till today, his words and his conversations, I still carry very deeply in my heart.
Yes, it's incredible when you look at what he did, and we'll take a look at a little bit of that play when he just goes there and takes us there with him.
Mama! Mama was calm. She didn't bat an eye. It's like she and Dad had rehearsed this scene 1,000 times. First words out of her mouth: "You calm down. Don't you do nothing. Your daddy wants you to go to college." Now, while Mama was calming us down, Bill got in his truck and he drove away. Town is 4 miles if you take the dirt road to the highway and go in the town, or 3 miles if you take the trail through the valley. I took the trail through the valley to get the shaft. I ran, I cried, I screamed, "God, no! God, no!"
When we look at this, it's incredible to look at all that he brought out. What happened to the man who was convicted of killing his father?
Well, soon after the trial, of course, Mr. Ray, on the advice of his family, went off to college and tried to survive over there as much as he could. And the man that was convicted was supposedly supposed to serve term, but he never, I think he just barely got a slap on the wrist, and that was the end of that. But I think he, not too long afterwards, also met some kind of death. I think it was a homicide. Somebody in his family shot him, and all of that stuff. And I think in his play he talks about that too, as payback.
Right. Poetic justice. When he was on the show and talked about Cured, he wrote the book Cured, The Power of Forgiveness. I thought it was incredible because, especially given the racial tensions we see now, all of the challenges, that what he was talking about was something that really transforms our lives if we can embrace it. And I think that when I miss him most, it's when I think about how much our youth, how much we need to continue to embrace that message. Leon, when you think about the different conversations, and as an educator, of course, C.A.R.L. was dedicated to making sure that youth did not continue with the pain, but with the information. What would you like for people who never had the chance to know C.A.R.L. Ray to understand about his life and his legacy?
Well, I consider myself an artist also. And
talk about what kind of art you perform.
Well, I do some writing and poetry and other things. And so the thing I most appreciate is him using that art form as a form of therapy. And what I'd like to see in our schools is for us to use art, not only as just providing students with just something to do, but really using it for its therapeutic value, because there are a lot of children in our schools who are carrying a lot of pain.
Yes.
It may not be the same type of pain that C.A.R.L. carried, but there's still pain there. And I think that the great opportunity in C.A.R.L's work and his life in general is to use his approach to have our kids take a look at some of the things that are in them that need to be brought out so they can heal just the way that C.A.R.L did. So that's what I see as sort of being the opportunity of C.A.R.L Ray's life.
Yes. Rufus, do you have some thoughts you want to add to that?
Actually, I do. One of the things I'd like to do is to bring out the bridge that he was afforded because he went to a historically black college, Tuskegee. I went to an historically black college as well. And one of the things that is common among them is the nurturing and caring of the staff, not just the teachers, of the deans and the entire staff. They care. And that's one of the things that he brought out, in a subtle way in his writing and his play, is the importance that historically black college experience gave him the bridge to get to where he can do all of the good things he did thereafter. And I think it's one of the keys, in his therapy, his continued development, and his ability to hang on through one of the toughest times we could possibly have.
Yes.
If I can add something, the word I would use is community. And
yes, that's a good one.
There.
Absolutely.
And C.A.R.L was very much about community. He knew what that meant. And so I think coming here and living in San Jose, he really felt our kids did not have the opportunity to have that. And so that's, I think, was what he was trying to create.
Right, and that's certainly the Council for Academic Resources and Leadership, C.A.R.L, his nonprofit, continues those trips so that students can go to historically black colleges and see that and understand. And it's true that he always carried that sense of community. Chike, I remember when you and C.A.R.L invited me to come do some interviews with Mr. Clark, a World War II hero, for a documentary. And C.A.R.L was just kind of making sure everybody was taken care of and everything. And it was just always such a gracious comfort to be in his presence. Being from the South as well, he did have that sense that he carried with him. He shared with some people how ill he was, and others weren't aware. And I just talked with someone the other day, was really surprised to hear when he passed. And there was a tribute that they had for him just a little while before he passed, and we're going to take a look at just a snippet of that right now. I think it's wonderful that he was able to enjoy that. And then there was also, of course, the beautiful memorial service after he passed away, where it was good to hear from friends he'd known from years, members of his posse who paid tribute, and of course the wonderful tributes that were paid in that way. In the time since he's made his transition, Chike, what do you consider the things that stay with you most? I mean, you're continuing to do work on some things that were in progress. So you hear his words, you see his image even with you now.
Well, I think it's just the gift of his humanity. Brother Leon talked about community. C.A.R.L lived his life as a gift to others. He loved, and I think continues to love, us as a people. He just, he was just a gentleman that would go 10 steps, 10 miles to make sure that that you don't want for anything. He was such a generous human being, period. I've traveled to as far as Germany with him, and showing films and doing different kinds of things, and wow, I think what stays with me every day is just always to remember that just give and just keep giving, even if people don't appreciate it. He just continued to give to the very last, and I think even when he was a little bit, on the not so healthy side, he never would want you to suffer or feel pain or feel any
that because he was suffering from cancer that you felt badly for him. He wanted to make you feel better.
That was not part of his lexicon.
I met a man who talked to me about forgiveness about 22 years later, and that changed it. The greatest moment in my life was when I forgave the man who killed my father. Oh, it was amazing.
I appreciate this time, and we're going to have a little focus as well on the organization, C.A.R.L, that continues his legacy before we complete the show. But I thank you so much for the time you've taken, for all that you've contributed, that you continue to contribute to our communities, and also to coming here today to remember C.A.R.L and enjoy, so that you might also have an opportunity to feel that if you didn't have the privilege of meeting C.A.R.L Ray, that you know him a little better because of our conversation today. So thank you all again. C.A.R.L Ray's wife of 34 years, the love of his life, Brenda, has now joined us. Brenda, it's good to see you. Yeah, thank you for being here. I haven't seen you since the memorial service. So first of all, again, our condolences. And how are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well. You know, it's a process, so
yeah.
We're walking through it.
Yes, and the family?
Yeah. The family's the same. Yeah, we're doing well. We have so many precious memories, so that helps us get through.
Yes, and I want to thank you for joining us, because that's one of the things we want to talk about. And we switched the picture back there. I love this one. This is one of your favorite pictures of C.A.R.L from the 70s. So tell me, how did you two meet?
Well, actually, we were introduced at a party. I had a couple of girlfriends that were bent on finding me a man. And I told them I had two criteria, really, for that. One, of course, he had to be a Virgo.
Oh, really? Okay.
And secondly, he had to be a black man.
Okay. Now, why a Virgo?
Well, I was into, you know, the signs then, and I'm a Taurus.
Oh, okay.
So I limited to Virgos or Capricorns, and I dated Capricorns, so I thought, okay, so much for that. I'll go for Virgos.
You went for a Virgo. So when you met him, how did they brought him over to you, or at the party, or how did that happen?
Well, one of them had a party, and yeah, they introduced us. And you know his personality.
Yes,
so.
I'm sure he was cracking jokes and talking to you and telling you how beautiful you are, and you are. And so,
thank you.
What did you think of him?
I must have been impressed.
Clearly.
He was the life of the party then, so I thought, oh, okay, so I can at least have fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
so that's it.
So you met, and then it was pretty quickly after that you two decided to start building a life together?
Well, actually, no.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we both decided, because we had previously married.
Oh, okay.
And we decided we didn't want the marriage thing anymore.
Oh.
So we vowed we would never get married.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Yeah. And how did that wind up changing?
Oh, we had so much fun. Yeah, you know, and we got to really know each other. And somewhere along the line, it just changed. You know how we are as women.
Right.
After a while, it's okay, hey, this.
Especially without that
enough
pressure
of that.
at the beginning.
Okay, now, yeah. The pressure starts again.
Right. So you married, happy marriage, children. Tell us about the children.
Well, we have one biological child together.
Yes.
Each of us had a child before we actually married.
Okay.
And we just kind of adopted children along the way. So we have at least 7 that we call our children.
Oh, wow. And that seems to be just, both of you have such generous hearts, and certainly C.A.R.L's personality seems like the more the merrier. Let's make sure that people are included. We were talking earlier about his great sense of community and how he always made sure that he had each one of us feeling like he was always thinking about us, even if we didn't talk for a while. It just seemed like he had that way of just connecting with everyone, so unique and special. Yes.
He had, just an absolutely tremendous, not only personality, that really intrigued me, actually, because could be really confusing sometimes. He's very complex, but his memory. I've only met one other person with a memory like his. I mean, it's like he just absorbed everything.
Yes.
So if nobody was a stranger, And you told him your name, he remembered your name. You told him your family history, he remembered the history.
Amazing.
So very much to me, because it takes 3 times for me. Okay, what did you say your name was again? But so he became my encyclopedia.
And he had so many
address book.
Yeah, address book and all of those things. He had so many projects. He was a comedian, an educator. You have the C.A.R.L. Leadership Academy. We want to talk a little bit about that as well. But what was your home life like?
Actually, we had, he would come, you know, because he's so busy.
Right.
So he was in and out a great deal of the time. We eventually established a rule that, okay, you can't be away from home more than 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And then it kind of dwindled down to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So 2 weeks, and then he'd come home, and of course we were always, well, the majority of the time we were happy to see him.
Right. Well, the reality of a 34-year marriage is that there are going to be days, and for people who really stay together, you have to talk about the tough issues. So every day may not be rosy, but overall, to have 34 years of laughter together, yes, I understand.
Yeah. And he wasn't that funny at home. I mean, he was a comedian out, but at home he was more serious and always thinking. You know, so I guess that's where all the projects came from. Always communicating. He was pick up the phone. I need to call. He was just, you know, even when he was ill, you know, people, I haven't heard from you. What's going on? You know, because he was so really consistent in terms of communicating with people.
Yes.
And so our home was filled with laughter too. When he was home, then I said, hey, then you might as well be daddy. You know, you can be the mommy daddy. So he took care of our child when she was younger, along with my mother, of course.
Right.
So they made lots of videos and movies, and it's been a real comfort to her. But he was always just living life, you know, just living life. Had his moments too, but you know, just what I called a really amazing person with a lot of courage.
We're glad that you have such wonderful memories, and thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you for the honor and opportunity.
Yes. And we thank you for joining us as well. And that's our show. I'm Janice Edwards. We want to thank everyone who's contributed to this show, and please also look at the credits for more information about that. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all that you do to make our Bay Area and our world a better place. Please join us again next time. We look forward to seeing you then.